The American public has, through legislation, determined that we need an extraordinary set of disclosure of financial records of people running for president, and I've complied with all that. And then, in addition, put out 2 more years of tax returns. But I understand that the Democrats are going to try and do everything in their power to keep this election from being about the failure of President Obama to turn around our economy.
That was Mitt Romney in April explaining that he has no plans to release multiple years of tax returns like President Obama did, or even like Mitt Romney's own father did in 1967 when he ran for president. So far, Romney has only released his 2010 tax return. In April, he filed for an extension for his 2011 tax return, but his spokeswoman promised that, quote, sometime in the next 6 months and prior to the election, Governor Romney will file and release the 2011 return when there is sufficient information to provide an accurate return. The AP reports the Republican presidential candidate refuses to identify his biggest donors who bundle money for his campaign. He often declines to say who's meeting with him or what he's doing for hours at a time. He puts limits on media access to his fundraisers. Joining me now, Karen Finney, former DNC communications director and MSNBC political analyst, and Pulitzer Prize-winning author David K. Johnston, the tax columnist for Reuters and professor at Syracuse Law School. David, you've been dying to get your hands on those Romney tax returns. I know you have. I know it's frustrating. Talk to us about what we would want to find, what you'd be looking for in older tax returns, especially tax returns filed without the anticipation of a presidential campaign, if Romney ever filed one of those.
Well, an if is a very important issue here, because I think there's good reason to think he's been thinking about this since before Bain. But since the founding of Bain, I think what the American people deserve to learn about is, did you buy any illegal gray market tax shelters? Were you audited in a way that the government found serious problems? Did you make use of offshore vehicles in order to defer or not pay taxes? Did you take advantage of things that were not caught in audits by the IRS? I mean, the IRS didn't audit, for example, George Bush's tax return the year he made almost all of his money from selling the Rangers. So I don't understand why he is reluctant to release this. If his returns are clean, if there's nothing there to worry about, then why not just provide them and say, see, I've done everything. Why this? Well, I've complied with the limit of the law. By the way, as a Mormon, one of the things the church teaches is that he who must be commanded in all things is an unwise and slothful servant, and that you're not to do the minimum, you're to do the right. The teaching of the church is you must choose the right in all cases. Well, choosing the right in this case is being candid and forthright with the American people.
Karen Finney, when you listen to David talk about the potential of what's in these tax returns, obviously it's not the total size of the Romney wealth that he's concerned about, because that won't even be shown in personal tax returns. There's all sorts of ways of holding that outside of the personal returns. So it won't reveal that he's a rich guy. We know this. The only thing politically worth hiding in those tax returns are the kinds of embarrassments that David's talking about.
Well, that's exactly right. Although, remember, Mitt Romney has already told us that he knows that there are things in there that the Democrats, those evil Democrats, will use against him, right? Which, you know, nobody's actually pressed the question to say, well, then what is that, right, if you're that concerned about it? But there are a couple of things here, Lawrence. I mean, as you know, it's complicated to try to communicate what is relevant, like the things that David is talking about, to a voter who is more worried about job creation. What the danger for Romney is it plays into the narrative, and this is why I think it's so important that as the Obama campaign goes on, they have to continue to put it to the narrative that this is a guy who plays by a different set of rules. He's able to play by the set of rules that is how people accumulate wealth and keep wealth, while the rest of us, you know, if we lose on an investment, we lose on an investment. We don't have tax shelters. We don't have other ways to, you know, shell games and ways to funnel our money around. So, again, I think the important thing is to connect it back to the bigger narrative, because, you know, we'll all be fascinated with the details, but I think most voters, it goes to, is this guy honest and trustworthy?
David, you began by just rattling off the top of your head a series of about 5 questions, which I'm going to go back to the tape and write down, because these are very important questions. And I think there is now a challenge to the media in the questions that you just outlined. It seems to me there is no excuse for campaign reporters not to ask one or more of the questions that you just outlined. And going forward into presidential debates, there will be no excuse for presidential debate moderators to not ask at least one of the questions that you just identified.
No, and I think the American people should hold journalists accountable for this. We have had a long time now journalists not asking questions. You know, the problem in this country isn't a lack of investigative reporting. 1,000 of us are going to meet in Boston this weekend. The problem is the beat reporting, the ordinary day-to-day reporting, the failure to ask the tough question, to keep pressing it, and to then raise the question, well, then why won't you answer the question? What are the reasons that you're not willing to deal with this? And journalists should be just as tough on President Obama or any other candidate, because this is a job where the only test is your judgment. And I would say here in Governor Romney, we are not seeing good judgment in dealing with this issue.
Which, you know, Lawrence, if I could just add to that, I think part of the issue, though, here is clearly the Romney campaign has made the political calculation that what's in there is more dangerous than a political risk of not releasing them. And that is really the crux of where journalists should be asking this question.
Or they've certainly created the impression that that's the case.
True.
And why would you do that? I mean, which tends to argue for what Karen said.
But, Karen, the Romney campaign has also clearly made the calculation, and I've seen campaigns make this calculation before, that the campaign press is so lazy, relatively lazy and uninformed on particulars, that they will not ask these questions and that they don't know how to ask these questions.
Well, and that they don't really have time and the space in whatever platform they're either writing for or reporting for to get into some of these issues, right? I mean, we are in a Twitter culture.
They don't have time because they waste their time on the idiotic games of what word did Romney use yesterday or what word did Obama use yesterday. This is all to the campaign press's own discredit.
And I don't make an excuse for them. I'm just saying, I mean, these are the kinds of excuses that I think people, use. But you're right. I mean, there's no reason you could not press these questions, particularly, and this is clearly part of why the Romney campaign keeps its distance from the reporters, is it's the kind of thing where somebody should be asking the question every single day.
All right, reporters, rewind the tape, write down David's questions, and get on this. Karen Finney and David K. Johnston, thank you both very much for joining me tonight. Coming up, the decision to block anything and everything the president tried to do in order to beat him in 2012 now has one good result. The voting public has figured out Republicans are doing that. And next, we will reveal the winner of our Name the Romney Campaign Bus contest. And the winner is not the Ironed Jeans Express.